Yag, please join me on the stage. We're going to get going with our first speaker of the day. And so, Yaagneshwaran Ganesh, isn't that a cool name? He is going to talk about conversation intelligence. What's up, Yag?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited, and I, really loved your intro. So absolutely kicked about this.
Excellent, man. Well, I'm going to hop off and you share your slides if you have any, and
Yes.
I'll catch you later.
All right. So let me share my screen. So just to make sure everybody's able to see my screen now. All right. So today, before we get started, I just wanted to wish everyone here a happy Diwali from India because it's Diwali here. And now to the topic of discussion. So what I want to discuss here is basically, it depends on the size of company, how you go about your product marketing, and then how you handle customer data and user research and all of that. But we are going to primarily look at how you can use conversation intelligence to do your user research, and how you can get actionable data so that your teams can actually know how your customer is using your product, what they're looking for, and things like that. Now, to start with, the fundamental problem in any company is three things. There is no visibility as to what the reps are talking about. So what I mean here is that it can be your sales rep, or it can be your customer success manager. These are the people who are typically customer facing in most organizations, and these conversations usually tend to be super siloed in most of the places. I've been in marketing positions across different companies over the last 12, 13 years, and the fundamental problem I see is that marketing always often tends to work on assumptions. Now, as a product marketer, if you don't know how your customer is thinking, then you're always going to convert your product features into problem statements, and then reconvert those problem statements into the solutions that your product is offering. And that is no good. It doesn't help anybody. Second is there is a constant lack of receiving this competitive product-based intelligence. Speaking about the kind of feature requests, it could be the typical problems that these customers face on a regular basis and things like that. And third is having that feedback loop. Sometimes you go back to your CRM and try to find that record where why did this customer, why we lost this customer. And you see this one liner that often says things like, hey, the prospect found it too costly, or they turned to a competitor. And it doesn't tell anything further. And it doesn't help us make a decision or understand this and process this a little further. So what happens is, again, it depends on if what size of company are you. If you are a fairly bigger company, then you have a product team which has user researchers who typically talk to customers on a daily basis. And this is how a typical user research scenario looks like. A typical user research person reaches out to a set of customers that they want to talk to, schedule a meeting, then they have an agenda, and from there they go on to have a conversation where they collect the data, join a typical meeting, ask these questions. And while they ask these questions, they are taking notes, which are kind of back and forth. Sometimes, it can be that little context switching can be very awkward, in the sense like somebody's talking and I'm just taking notes. I'm not actively listening. So I'm probably missing a few things there. And then again, you come back and update the data. Well, sometimes you're taking notes in pen and paper. And what happens is, if you're not updating everything fully or not taking notes fully, then it's not helping other people in the team. Or you might not be updating it in a central system, which means the data doesn't come into the central system at all and nobody has access to it. And then you do a follow-up if there is needed, and then share the feedback. That's it. So between this entire cycle, you're probably using about 5 to 6 apps minimum, right from your Zoom to Google Calendar to your notes, Notepad, whatever. And after doing so many meetings and wasting like 20 plus hours in a given month, there is no real key takeaway. What happens is, because all these informations are lost in disparate systems, then there is no one place to collect all this data. Second is, what happens is you are during the meeting, because you're taking notes, you're not able to make the most out of those conversations there. And finally, once it's done, there is no real intelligence that you get. One conversation, two conversation, it's fine. But when you're doing about 20 plus conversations, then you need to be able to synthesize as to what am I getting out of this. Is there a pattern that I'm able to cull out based on all these conversations? So here's how we go about doing it in Avoma. Just wanted to share this as a practice. So we use our own internal tool, which is Avoma conversation intelligence platform. And for anybody who's curious what Avoma means, it's an acronym for a very organized meeting assistant. So typically, step one, you need to make sure that there are regular reminders sent out to the people with whom you have agreed for meetings. In fact, this call that I'm on today, there was one notification that I got 1 hour before the conversation started. It makes sure that there is the no show is avoided. Then there is an automated note taking that happens in the background. So this is not like having a transcription of the call, but I'm talking about one bulleted page where you can see the entire conversation. Like if you can imagine this like a sales scenario, we are looking at, hey, what are the competitors that were mentioned by this prospect, and what they like about this product, or things like what problem are they trying to solve. So in a typical user research scenario, this could be things like the use case that they are using your product for, and then it could be what are the features that they're using the most, and things like that. From there, you use it to coach and identify a set of patterns, saying that, hey, if this is a salesperson using a product, these are the set of things that they typically are finding it useful. And if it's somebody from a product side or a CSM side, they are using it very differently. Now that helps in not only in terms of packaging your product better, it also helps you in the way you price your product. For example, a typical SaaS product is either like tier based or feature based pricing. But what you want to do is like you want to go about and get as close to your customer and understand as to what are the use cases are. You don't want somebody to be paying for a set of features that they are never going to be using. So identify what is important for each user and then start packaging that. And finally, avoid this low value tasks of data entry and automate certain things where you shouldn't be spending your energies on. Then comes the collaboration part. So this is where the actual core piece comes in. Now, in the first part, when the data collection happens, now it's still siloed. But when you have a centralized system, the beauty is that you can instantly make it democratized for the entire organization, wherein everybody can come in and listen to this call. For example, some of the blogs that I have written for Avoma come from the backdrop of me listening to customer conversations on a daily basis. For example, somebody would ask my account executive, "Hey, I see something called filler words on your product, but does it, like, just because if I use filler words, do I lose a deal?" Now we go back and do that little bit of research, get that data around, and say that, hey, there are three things here. Just because you're using filler words, you're not going to lose the deal. But if you're using about 70% filler words for every 100 words you speak, then definitely it does not give a great customer experience there. And finally, if you're going to be too thorough, too prepared, it comes across very plastic and rehearsed, so it doesn't feel real. So have some moderation of about 1 to 2%. Now this is not something that you will find in a product, but once you understand what the customers are looking for through these conversations, you will be able to create content around that. And then internally, one of the things that we practice the most, which I thought will be helpful to share with a lot of people, is having this concept of snippet sharing. So what I mean by that is, imagine you having a support conversation with a customer. They say that, hey, I'm using your product, this part was really buggy, I think this needs to be fixed, can I get some help? Now, internally, if you're going to file a bug report to your support system or your engineers, and then they have to come in and look at it, go through a ticket system, it's going to waste a lot of time. So what we typically do is go into the just these calls and cut out a small part of the transcript, which means that I can cut out just about 20 or 30 seconds where the customer was explaining the problem, or how they're using something, whatever the use case may be, and just drag and drop that 20-30 second video into our Slack, or whatever our internal communication channel is, and that's it. So that becomes super easy for us to instantly communicate without any loss of context. And more importantly, there is no bias here. Sometimes translating this information from what is heard to somebody inside, it might be based on how I understand or how I perceive this. Now, just by dropping the snippet, you can avoid that bias and make sure that everybody understands. And then internally, we also have this concept of comments and feedback sharing. So the best part about this is that because you're here today, we are in a remote world, we are pretty much having those Zoom calls for everything, and typically people are spending time on, like, say, 20 calls or 15 calls a day. And it's, you can do so much by avoiding this, by just having this asynchronous communication built into your ecosystem. Sometimes instead of just having this conversation, we have a feedback right there under the snippet or under the conversation, write the mark and say that, hey, you could have done this better. Or it could be just a product person reaching out to a salesperson and saying that, hey, you could have explained this feature better. So the whole point of all of this is to say that the moment you open up your customer facing conversation and make it accessible internally, then you get a lot of insight. And this is how the intelligence comes across. How, what kind of intelligence do you get from conversations? One is you kind of understand what people are requesting, what problems they are facing. And then there's another aspect called deal intelligence, but it's not relevant to our conversation today, so I'll not go into that. So let's look into the intelligence that you can derive from these conversations. So typically how this looks, you look at these conversations, about 20, 30 conversations, or even hundreds of conversations over a particular period, say a month, and then cull out a pattern on what customers are requesting the most. Now you can understand here, as you see, two screenshots from our internal product to show, here we are understanding what are the top three use cases that people buy our product for. And then there are the other set, the set of features that people request you the most. And this helps in you preparing a product roadmap and prioritizing things the right way. Many a time you have a vision and a North Star, which is great. But at the same time, there are going to be a set of requests that are coming in from customers every now and then. Imagine or and make sure that is this coming from my ICP? Should I prioritize? Or who is this coming from? The moment you prioritize that and identify these are the things from the ICP, then you need to make a list of things, automate it if you can, and make sure that your product team has access to it so that you're developing the right times, right things at the right time continuously. It becomes a process. And then this is one of the things that I want to leave you with as part of today's conversation. I want to say that the simple habit of building building playlists and listening to conversations makes a lot of difference. Here's something, again, a snapshot from what we do internally is we create these playlists of all kinds of conversations that we want to listen to. Sometimes, for example, I create a playlist for these discovery calls to understand what are the kind of things that prospects are asking. Similarly, customer success calls are the playlists that our product teams love to listen to, because this is where they get an impression of what is going on. You go into these check-in calls that happens periodically, you get an understanding of what people like, what people don't like. And similarly, you can use it for many other purposes. But once I made my daily journey, daily jog, and in that daily jog, I used to make sure that in this 1 hour, I'm at least listening to two of my customer conversations. And once that becomes ingrained into your culture, then a lot of things can change. So with that, the final message that I want to leave you with is to say that customer conversations are gold. So make sure that you take it very seriously. And there's a lot that can come out if you are having your ears close to the ground. Thank you so much.
Well, let me see if I get my image on as well. There we go. Awesome,
Yeah,
man. Thank you so much. And we have questions also from the audience. Let's
absolutely.
tackle the questions first here. So Sam is asking, how do you get product teams to listen to calls regularly to spot larger patterns and asks instead of single customer feedback?
Right. So when you look at single customer feedback, again, it's going to be often biased. So what we do, again, there are so many conversation intelligence tools available in the market today. Avoma is one of them. So what you do is basically Zoom or your Google Meet, you can only record a certain number of calls and it becomes very complex. So using a product like this, what happens is you will be able to record, transcribe, get notes of all these conversations in one place. And then you will also be able to get that intelligence that I showed you, the set of things that the people were requesting, set of things that people are using your product for, and things like that. So once you look at a larger set of conversations and then call out a pattern from say 100 calls, 200 calls over a period of 1 month, 2 month, a quarter, then you get some sort of a pattern. So one out calls will definitely not give you the answer. And you also need to know that what kind of customer, if you're having a product that caters to multiple personas, then make sure that you understand what kind of personas use your product in what way.
Cool. Um, Galina is asking, don't you need special people to conduct research? How often do you conduct research?
Absolutely. You need to have specific people for research based on what you're using for. Like, say, that's why I said it depends on the size of the company. Bigger companies have specific people doing user research interviews. But on the contrary, to start with, you need not go that full fledged. You can start with simple looking into, say, the check in conversations of customer success. That's a great place to start. And customer success conversations, I would say, you should make sure that you do at least once a month. But depending on the ticket price of that customer, you decide to do it as often as you can. And again, it depends on your team size, your company size, and all of that. But typically I would say at least have a flow of once a month.
Cool. Well, Sam is asking a very interesting question. So how is Avoma thinking about competing and winning in this space? Gong is the giant. So, like, how are you guys thinking about, competing and winning here?
That's a fantastic question. So the way we look at it, see, the thing is, generally any technology, it's going to get up quickly populated based on certain how many products. In fact, this is conversation intelligence is one space where we see new companies popping up almost every week. Okay. So the thing is, you need to have a unique problem that you're solving for, and a unique DNA and a unique angle with which you're going. So for example, because you asked about Gong, Gong is largely going after sales as an audience. For us, the way we look at our solution is we look at it from a horizontal perspective, which means somebody, entire organization gets access to this product, which means me as a marketer, I can get perspectives as to what they're asking the prospects, what they're asking the sales, sales customers, customer success calls and all of that. Similarly, product folks who are listening to these calls, they get perspectives on what features to develop. Similarly, somebody from sales who are listening to these calls, they can get a hang or create playlists to understand that, hey, the other reps who are quite successful are doing things the way they are handling objections, they are doing it this way, so I can learn from that. So there are multiple angles to look at it. But I would say for us at Avoma, it comes from the our single vision statement is this: we want to make sure that we are reducing your physical work as much possible, in the sense like you shouldn't be wasting your time on low value tasks, whereas you should be able to augment the tasks that are of most value to you. So that's the vision that we come from. Today it might be a couple of things from the meeting side that we are solving for. Tomorrow it could be much bigger. So it's the vision that is never going to die.
All right. And another question here. You have many teams interacting with prospects and customers. How do you create a central system? More importantly, how you create a culture where leadership in the organization gets update on the prospect and customer feedback to focus on creating a strong brand?
Right. So this is exactly why a product like this is super useful, because everybody knows what's going on. In predominantly most of the organizations, everything works in silos. And when nobody's aware of what is going on, then everybody is going to run in different directions. The salespeople are going to have a specific set of view. In fact, the coordination is very, very important right from the word go. For example, one of the things that I do internally, like say if I'm launching an ebook and I get about 500, 600 downloads on the first day. The first thing that I do is I immediately make sure that I reach out to my AE and tell them that, hey, don't reach out to these people. These are just downloaded the ebooks. They are not people who have shown interest in the product. It's not a demand generated. It's just consumption of content. So let's treat it that way. So you need to have a process internally where everything is very, very open. Build an open cultured organization and use products that will democratize intelligence across the company as a basic. And then you create internal workflows as to who does what and how do you set up that life cycle.
Booyah. All right. Okie dokie. So, thank you, Yag, so much for sharing your thoughts with us, and we'll see you on the internet.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time here and appreciate you for having me.